I'm Edward Antosh of Squamish, and I've been invited to try and relate a short history on the history of Squamish since my coming here. I came to Squamish on October the 6th, 1936. At that time, about 500 people lived in the valley. You may ask, how did you ever find your way to Squamish? My fiancée, Vi, at that time used to come to Squamish to visit her uncle and aunt, Mr. and Mrs. John Sabatka Sr., who had come to Squamish in 1926 when John had got a job with Merlin Ring, who logged in the valley for many years. So it was on one of these visits that I accompanied her to Squamish. I was really impressed with the beautiful scenery. What a difference from the open plains of Saskatchewan, when on a clear day you could only see the horizon many miles away. On Christmas Day 1936, Vi and I took a walk to the old Union steamship docks. What a beautiful sunny day, warm, shirt-sleeve weather. I said to myself, at last, I have found paradise. But alas, about a few days later, a Squamish wind blew in, and I was never as cold in Saskatchewan in 40 below zero weather. The people of Squamish were such a friendly bunch. Coming from a farming province where all towns had a herd law, I was amazed to see the cows and horses having the right-of-way on the wooden sidewalks. You had to look out for broken planks and other remains. Squamish was rather isolated, as the only transportation to Vancouver was by Union steamship, and the PG railway only ran from Squamish to Quesnel. The only road was into the upper Squamish to mile 22, and it was very rough and almost impassable in the spring when the frost came out of the ground. Yes, our last number of years of our winters have been mild. The earlier winters were quite severe. Water pipes froze that were 20 inches below the surface. A road was built to Britannia in the early 1940s. It followed the path of least resistance, so it was very winding. It was said that snakes hurt their spines when crawling on it. When I first came here, there were only about 7 motor vehicles in the valley, 3 taxis, 2 trucks, and 2 cars. The main industries were logging, mining in Britannia, pulp mill and wood fiber, and of course the railway shops in Squamish. There was only one school at that time, the Masheter School, which was built in 1905. An addition was added in 1940. And I had the pleasure of working for Mr. Frank Scott, who had erected the addition. Mr. Masheter owned a lot of property from 3rd Avenue to Cleveland, north of Winnipeg Street. Most of it was in pasture. When it was subdivided, lots 50 feet by 120 feet sold for $75. Compare that to a price of $125,000 recently. Squamish had many natural channels that served as drainage at that time. The bowling alley was built on what was a large slough. From there it flowed past the Chieftain Hotel over to the medical clinic. There was a bridge across Cleveland Avenue, and then it emptied into a large pond, which is now the municipal park. From there to the present holding pond in the area of the recycling bins on 3rd Avenue, not very far from where we are at the present time. The area of the park was filled when they dredged the small boat harbor and pumped the gravel into it. When most of these channels were filled for construction, drainage was provided by digging ditches along the sides of the streets. We played ball on the open fields that are now occupied by the school buses and maintenance shop. With cows grazing on these fields, a wheelbarrow and shovel were more useful than a bat, ball, and a glove. Although this was a drawback, it also had its advantage, as I would clean the field and use the manure as fertilizer for the garden. The area we now know as Dentville was a forest of alder trees. The Dent family came to Squamish in 1939. They brought a small sawmill and set it up in the woods north of the youth center known as Bunker. They cut the alder logs into lumber, which they shipped to Vancouver to be used in the manufacture of furniture. They also built their homes in the vicinity of the Gardner Motors, so the area became known as Dentville. When we first came to Squamish, nobody locked their doors as there was no need to do so. The only time we locked our doors was when we went to Vancouver, not worrying about theft, but for the safety of kiddies who might unwittingly go into the house and make a mess or hurt themselves. This changed when the highway came to Squamish in 1958. Many changes have taken place since our arrival. The village was incorporated in 1948, and that, to my knowledge, was only to Buckley Avenue. But as the population grew and areas were settled further out, incorporation grew with it. Until now, we are a district municipality. In October 1940, we had a major flood. Downtown Squamish was under 4 feet of water. That is when our wooden sidewalks were a great asset. So they served those that did not have a boat as a means of getting around by using a chunk of sidewalk as a raft. Concrete does not float. The original dikes were built by the McGee family. They came to Squamish from Bowen Island in the early 1900s. This was to stop the tide from coming into their area so they could cut hay to feed their cattle. Did you know that downtown Squamish is 4 feet below sea level? Since 1940, we have built higher and better dikes, so we feel much more secure. Vi and I have lived in Squamish for 63 years. We have enjoyed every year of our stay here.